I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and I have a bit of breaking news for you about the disgraceful MAGA Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Now, if that name sounds vaguely familiar, but you can't quite place it, Boebert is actually a congresswoman from Colorado who hasn't really done anything of substance or note with her career. What she's really most known for these days is for being a complete buffoon and insanely obnoxious, as she was caught vaping, being really disruptive and loud, and actually groping and fondling her date during an airing of Beetlejuice. I just gotta say, it's always the MAGA people, isn't it? It's always those people that are on the far right or the MAGA movement that are acting like total jackasses in public and yet have the audacity to call out others. It's wild. These MAGA people like Boebert are always at the center of these scandals. It's like a drug to them. They cannot seem to help themselves, and they cannot behave themselves in public. It's really sad and frankly pathetic that people like Boebert and the rest of these MAGA nutcases are allegedly leading this country and have any semblance of power. It really does seem that with increasing frequency that these MAGA people, these MAGA politicians like Boebert or like Marjorie Taylor Greene are constantly getting into trouble, constantly acting contrary to the values they so often like to preach. And though Boebert has said that she was acting so incredibly rude and inappropriate in public because she was going through a divorce, I find it so disgustingly hypocritical that these people constantly preach these higher than thou, holier than thou values and act like this. People like Boebert and the rest of these MAGA lunatics have absolutely zero room to talk about family values and what's good and right for this country when they act like depraved lunatics like this. But we are actually not here to talk about Boebert's incredibly inappropriate behavior in a movie theater and sexual misconduct. We are actually going to be focusing in on a massive lawsuit that is targeting Boebert herself and risks bringing her entire campaign, her entire career, to a shattering end. Now, Boebert absolutely needed this story of the sexual misconduct and inappropriate behavior during Beetlejuice to kind of die down and go away, as she is seeking re-election. But Boebert's attempts to kind of fly under the radar for a time have come to a swift end. Currently, there is a lawsuit against Boebert that we'll dive into in a moment, but it alleges that Boebert is responsible for her acts of defamation. Now, this civil suit was filed by a man named David Wheeler, who is actually the founder of the outlet known as American Muckrakers. And according to the Colorado Newsline, the lawsuit alleges that Boebert defamed the organization, American Muckrakers, after it published its allegations against her, and that she obtained a temporary restraining order against Wheeler through malicious prosecution. Now, these allegations against Boebert are originally from David Wheeler and from American Muckrakers. And the allegations that Wheeler and American Muckrakers levied against Boebert are brutal. Keeping in mind that Boebert is one of the most conservative members of Congress, the allegations state that she actually had 2 different abortions and was previously an escort. Wheeler got this information through a variety of different sources, from recordings, phone calls, in-person meetings, text messages, emails, and even Twitter messages. And with all of this ample evidence on hand, Wheeler had, quote, no reason to believe the source's information was false. Now, shortly after these allegations came out against Boebert, she actually went onto Sean Hannity's show on Fox News and basically tried to debunk all of these claims and said she would be pursuing legal action against Wheeler and American Muckrakers. However, that has not happened. Now, clearly, Boebert's allegations against Wheeler and American Muckrakers are completely bogus, and that is exactly why she has not followed up on any sort of legal action against them. Now, despite Boebert not taking any legal action against David Wheeler or American Muckrakers, her words could still have her on the hook for defamation. Again, according to the Colorado Newsline, Boebert made incorrect statements with the intent to damage the reputation of American Muckrakers and David Wheeler. And due to Boebert's comments, the American Muckrakers revenue took a free fall, dropping from $20,000 per month to less than $1,300 per month, according to the lawsuit. Now, for those of you doing the math at home, that is about a 92% drop in donations and financial support to Wheeler. Wheeler has stated too that Boebert's words have directly and personally impacted him, as American Muckrakers is his sole source of income. Now, in a bit of good news, bad news for American Muckrakers, the committee has actually raised almost $240,000, but spent nearly all of that on its efforts to pursue legal action against Boebert. Now, Wheeler is actually seeking $25,000 in compensation for each instance of libel, slander, and malicious prosecution, as well as some punitive damages. Boebert was absolutely trying to have this defamation lawsuit that has been filed against her dismissed. However, the judge presiding over the case, the U.S. Magistrate Judge Catherine Starnella, said absolutely not. Judge Starnella said that Boebert's attempts to dismiss this lawsuit were, quote, meritless. Now, in a written statement, Judge Starnella had a few things to say about Boebert and this entire trial as well, saying, quote, defendants' threats to sue plaintiff sponsors and donors are unprotected because they were neither made in good faith nor in serious contemplation of litigation. Judge Starnella went on to write, quote, while defendant, that being Boebert, has an interest in protecting her reputation, even through litigation, plaintiffs, that being Wheeler, donors and sponsors have a weightier interest in exercising their First Amendment right to engage in political speech in the form of financial donations to political action committees without fear of retaliation. The court finds no social value in allowing elected officials to silence speech they dislike by threatening gadfly journalist donors who have not themselves engaged in any unlawful or tortious activity. Now, all of that is to say that this is an incredibly bad day for Lauren Boebert and the MAGA movement. It would seem that Boebert just simply lacks the proper self-control to really be a proper congresswoman. Now, while this lawsuit might not be the end of Boebert's career, it certainly comes as a heavy blow as her, along with the rest of these MAGA nutcases, seem to be suffering defeat after defeat. It would seem that Boebert is very much taking after her idol Donald Trump in that she's finding herself taking on more and more defamation damages and hours spent in a courtroom. And to me, this is just further proof that Boebert, along with the rest of this MAGA movement, are just rotten to their very core. These people are absolutely willing to say and do whatever they want so long as it benefits them and keeps them in power. To me, this is the third strike. Boebert should absolutely resign in disgrace. She has been acting incredibly rude and undignified in public, is very much guilty of sexual misconduct, and now has this defamation lawsuit against her. She should be utterly ashamed of herself. Lauren Boebert is the exact kind of person that is at home in the MAGA movement, and her behavior is exactly why it is so important for all of us to vote come this November and get people like Lauren Boebert out of office.